All right, guys, joining us here on Submission Radio is one of the biggest MMA legends of all time, a former UFC champion. He is now focusing on his acting career with roles in the big hit Tyler Perry's Boo 2 and new projects on the way. He also manages Cris Cyborg, and he joins us here today. I'm, of course, talking about the legend himself, Tito Ortiz. Tito, welcome back to Submission Radio. It's great to have you, man.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me on the show once again.
Yeah, it is always an honor to have you back, Tito. We really appreciate it. We mentioned it in the intro. You have a lot of success in the acting world since retiring from fighting. Tell us, what was it like working with Tyler Perry in this movie?
Well, Tyler Perry is a workhorse. We ended up getting the whole film done in 5 days.
Wow.
By about 3 days prior to that, I was in Panama with the family on vacation for Poker Stars. And I was in the main event. I was down to the last 22 people out of 465, I think. And then I get an email from my agent saying that Tyler Perry wanted me for a film. And I'm on vacation in Panama. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, they need you on Monday. And that was Saturday night. I got the email. Before I could even answer the email, they doubled my pay. So It was kind of a blessing in disguise. I mean, I was going to work with him either way. I mean, to get an opportunity to work with Tyler Perry is just a blessing. And I ended up having to go all in my next hand, and the guy I was playing with was a Russian who was stack leader at the time. I had queen ace, he had king ace, and what turns on the flop was 3 queen queen. So I ended up taking him down on that one, and I was kind of bummed. And he's like, "What do you mean? You just won the hand?" And then I had to go on the next hand. And he didn't know the reason why that I had to leave the next day to a flight to Atlanta from Panama, and I went all in again, and he goes, "I don't believe you. I call you all in." And of course, he had pocket aces, and I think I had Jack 10, and the flop turned. He had another ace. He got his trips. He ended up taking me down, and I was like, "Yes." And he's like, "What are you saying?" "Yes, you just lost." I'm all, I got to go shoot a movie with Tyler Perry, man. I got an opportunity of a lifetime.
Was this John Malkovich from Rounders by any chance? I feel like you were playing John Malkovich in Rounders.
That's pretty much what it was like. It was pretty funny. It was just it was surreal. It was like a movie happening in real life. I was on a flight the next morning to Atlanta from Panama. Amber and the boys took a flight back to LA, and I landed in Atlanta. Went straight to Tyler Perry's film, or excuse me, his land. Fort McPherson in Atlanta. Walked into his office. He gave me the script and said, "Here's the role you're going to play," and we shoot in the morning.
Wow.
I've never been put in so much pressure in my life, and I mean, as the film got going, I got warmer and warmer. The film started getting easier and easier. So I remember my lines better, getting the attitude, the character that you wanted me to play. But it was literally, he handed me the script on a Sunday and started shooting Monday morning, and I was on my way back home on Friday night. The whole film was done. But it was a great experience. Just an amazing story.
Unbelievable. And the Russian guy has a lot to be grateful for. He should be grateful to Tyler Perry as well for you sort of letting him win that hand. And also, you've got a couple of new projects on the way, Yokozuna and Bleach. Can you tell us a little bit about these ones? Because we saw on the IMDb that they're sort of being worked on right now, but you're attached to both of them.
Yeah, well, Shadow Girl is one of the films that we just got done finishing. And Bleach, we did last year, and I know they're finishing sort of the pre-production of it. But I play an officer in Bleach. There's kind of the star. Was it Mark Justice? Actually, is the star of the film. He plays a kid who just has a hard time in life, and I end up meeting him later on as he gets a little older, and he's still the same kid and still causing the same problems. And then with Shadow Girl, I am a championship fighter. And there's a guy who's trying to make it through the ranks, and he gets an opportunity to fight the champion. And people are going to see that film because you get the answer what happens. But just small films I'm able to work on just to build my resume.
When we read Bleach, we needed to ask you this question. Is there actually any bleaching that goes on in the movie, or is it just the title that makes you think that?
I believe it's the title of the film. I guess it's the one you're going to have to see.
That's going to be the big twist in this one.
Yeah, remains to be seen. The funny thing is, we remember, though, when we were kids, your first beginning your acting career in the classic Cradle to the Grave in 2003, something that Dennis and I sometimes like to pop on and reminisce about. That was a personal favorite of ours. And remember, it was you and Randy Couture in a fight scene with Jet Li. Talk to us about that experience, because we imagine it would have been pretty surreal.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I was the UFC champ. Chuck Liddell was in it along with me and Randy. And, I got an opportunity to do some fight scene stuff. And you kind of get to see the whole different side of how films are made. And that's what gave me the interest of doing films. It was fun. Got an opportunity to work with the great producers and directors. And just to see how the whole movie is shot, you get a totally different perspective of how a film is made.
And I mean, Jet Li, he's just a bona fide legend. Did you have any interesting interactions with him? I mean, was he a fan of the UFC? You were the champion, then you were all over the place as one of the best in the world. Did he speak to you about being a fan of yours, or did you guys get a chance to chat much off set or on set?
No, he was pretty much to himself. The fight scenes were a little different than what normal, I guess you could say, fight scenes are. And one of the fight scenes that me and Chuck Liddell, we fought against each other in that film. And we had a fight choreographer kind of show us what they wanted. And I was like, I raised my hand. I'm like, can I just try something, me and Chuck? And Chuck just take the power off our punches and just try to do something to make it look interesting. We did one full scene, and everybody kind of stopped and said, "Are you guys okay?" Thinking that we were really, really hitting each other and really slamming each other. And it looked so good for them. They shot it and they loved it, and it was a great experience.
So I'm curious, because obviously everybody knows the history between you and Chuck. Was that a part of it at all? And was that sort of, in terms of what you guys did there, was it kind of like sparring, where to you guys it was just a regular, I guess, sparring session almost, whereas to everybody else it looked a lot worse?
Exactly. It was just strictly like a light sparring session. At the time, that was when me and Chuck Liddell weren't supposed to be friends or weren't friends. Go figure. You people go ahead and put the dots together and know what the true truth is. But we just kind of took the power off the punches and made it look good. And the director and producer loved what we were doing, so we followed through and finishing that whole scene. And I think in true life, that's the only one I ever got over Chuck Liddell.
It's funny because it just seems like no matter what you say, a lot of people are still. It's one of the best rivalries of all time. A lot of people always talk about Tito Ortiz versus Chuck Liddell, and I know you were on the show recently talking about the fact that it doesn't look likely that you'd be making a comeback to fighting at all. I'm just wondering, now that you've been retired for a little bit longer, have you had the urge at all to want to return or have another fight, since that retirement?
I guess that's an ongoing joke with my family and with my friends and fans. When I do come, or if I do come back, life is nice now. Not have to put so much training in. Actually, putting zero training in. Now I've been working on my other businesses, of course, with Primetime 360 with George Praising, Tito Auto Group in Mannheim, SoCal. That and acting and punishment athletics. I just have so much on my table right now. Fighting isn't something I'm really have my mind set to. My kids love the time home with dad, and not coming home all beat up from training helps out a lot too. But I think just the business acumen that I've always had, I've been able to push it that way.
I remember you saying pretty much similar sentiments last time we spoke to you, Tito. What about Chael Sonnen, though? Because it felt like you were sort of angling for a rematch at one point. And this is after your retirement, and a lot of people kind of thought, is Tito coming out of retirement? Is he angling for this fight? When he fought Vanderlei Silva, obviously you were cage side, you were yelling things out, and I think there was a few Instagram videos where you sort of hinted at, maybe coming back and punishing him more. Was there ever sort of, I guess, any serious consideration about coming out and fighting Chael again in a rematch, or anyone for that matter? Yeah,
you know what? I think it took my attorney to kind of sit me down and say, "Listen, you're not going to fight for free." That's how much I dislike the guy. I pretty much would have done it for any amount of money. But he's been quiet lately. He hasn't has said a word about my name, which is good. He was just kind of getting a little over the top, a lot of things he was saying about me, a lot of fake things he was saying about me, and I took it very personal, but he's kind of kept his mouth shut, which is good.
Just to follow up on that, what was it that sort of, I guess, frustrated you? What got under your skin, some of the things that he said?
Well, I mean, he says things about my character, about the person that he thinks I am, that I am not, and just spreading lies. When he talks about my kids and talks about my ex and things like that, that's my family, and that's something that I've been known to defend until the day I die. And he just, like I said, he got under my skin. He just pressed the wrong buttons and saying the wrong things. My whole career of 20 years, there's things I've never done is talk about a person's family, talk about a person's country, or said lies about a person. I've always said the truth and said what was right and sold the fight the right way. And I think Chael crossed the line by saying the things he said.
And obviously, even though you're retired, you're still a big part of the Bellator promotional machine. They like to get you out whenever there's a big card happening. So it's likely that you and Chael will probably cross paths sooner than later with some of these big Bellator cards coming up. So if you did run into him, would there still be animosity there? Do you think you'd still be frustrated with him? And what would it take for you, to mend the bridge with Chael Sonnen?
I think apology from him from the very beginning of all this stuff. I know it's a fight, but when you talk about my children and talk about me and talk about the things he said about my children's mother, is very disrespectful. But, if I did see him face to face, I don't know if I could hold myself back, but I think, the adult in me would hold myself back. But it's just one of those things. I haven't done anything with Bellator in a long time. I think they kind of got a little butthurt when I did the UFC Expo in, July. So I haven't really done anything with Bellator at all. And like I say, I'm just trying to pay the bills, man. That's all it comes down to. When someone offers you a big amount of money, you can't say no.
Wow, I didn't realize that happened between I guess you and Bellator. Is there sort of I don't know if they offered you something in the future, would you be open to sort of working with them again?
Yeah, I'm always willing to work with anybody. This as long as it's on a fair playing field on both sides, of course. I think it's just fair for how hard I work when it comes to promotion. Signing with the autographs for the fans. I'm always there for the fans. I'm always saying yes and doing everything they want me to do. I think I'm one of the easiest fighters to work with. And, it all, the proof is in the pudding, as long as I worked with the UFC and as long as I worked with Bellator.
And quickly, before we get off Bellator, Tito, last question. We know there's this big heavyweight tournament happening. There's some interesting members of this tournament. Obviously, Chael Sonnen, Ryan Bader's in there, Frank Mir, King Mo, Fedor, Rampage. There's been a little bit of criticism about this tournament because it is kind of padded out with a lot of light heavyweights, sort of smaller guys. But when you see this tournament, who are you pegging to possibly win this thing? Is there someone that stands out to you who you think can go on and win the whole thing?
I think Rampage can. I think Rampage should be that person to go out and win the whole thing. Just as long as he's doing the work. Chael's an easy fight for him, just as long as he's wrestling a lot. The strength difference is totally separate. Is Rampage coming in at heavyweight or is he coming in at light heavyweight is another question. But Fedor seems like he can't take a punch anymore. I mean, this business is super, super hard, and he's been some tough fights. The last fight with Matt Mitrione, it just showed how tough Matt Mitrione truly is. But I think it'd be a tournament makes it interesting to watch. I'll be excited when it does come.
Yeah, of course. And right now, the main focus that everybody's focused on is, of course, Cris Cyborg, who's fighting at UFC 219, somebody that you manage. From your perspective, talk to us about this fight and why did it take Holly so long to, I guess, accept this fight and this fight to come together?
I'm not sure. Holly was a great champion and still is a great fighter. And, is it doubt in her own mind and doubt in her management? Do they have to get paid the right amount of money? I know Cris signed it right on the dotted line as soon as they handed the contract over to her. I know George Pragin worked really, really hard with the UFC and Sean Shelby and Dana White to get this deal done. And the fans finally get to see two amazing strikers go at it together. And as being Cris Cyborg's wrestling coach and pretty much coach to put things together for the fight in general, me and Jason Perillo are gonna make it happen where Cris walks in and just dominates as she always does. And,
absolutely,
I think that's about as much as I can let out of the bag until the fight. We're only 3 weeks away from the fight, so Cris is ready now. But we got 3 weeks just to kind of tune up on some old habits, and those old habits will be fixed. I mean, I sit down and I watch all the strengths of Holly Holmes. I watch all the strengths of Cris Cyborg, and Cris Cyborg's strengths are a lot stronger than Holly's. And then Cris is just a lot more dynamic in a lot of things that she does with her jiu-jitsu and her wrestling. So Holly, I seen she pulled in some wrestling coaches in to help her out with the wrestling too. So I would like to see Holly try to wrestle with Cris. It would be a fun night for Cris.
And we've heard Cris talk in interviews about how beating Holly Holm is also a little bit like beating Ronda Rousey because of the way that Holly Holm dominated Ronda Rousey here in Melbourne. Would you agree with that sentiment?
It's two totally separate fighters, and I think Cris wouldn't be satisfied of just beating Holly as she would be satisfied to beat Ronda Rousey. I'm not sure what the idea in Ronda's mind of what she's going to do with her future if she's coming back to fight ever. But, Ronda Rousey versus Cris Cyborg would still be an amazing fight. But Cris beating Holly Holmes just kind of staples her legacy as being one of the greatest women fighters in MMA history.
Do you think that at this point, Cyborg versus Holm is the biggest money fight in women's MMA?
Today, yeah, I believe so. But, of course, there's a lot of other big fights out there for her. Her possibly against, who's a girl that won the title and refused to defend it against Cris?
Jermaine Durandamy?
Yeah, Jermaine. That's another good fight. Megan's another great fight. It's just what the UFC can put together. They're a PR machine, and Cris Cyborg is a knocking out machine. She's the modern day Mike Tyson. If anybody gets in front of her and she puts her hands on her, they're going to feel it.
It's interesting because you mentioned the UFC getting behind her. I mean, we know historically, and Cris has spoken to us about this on the show, that, the UFC sort of missed the boat with her initially, didn't really sort of treat her the way that she deserved. And this is what caused a lot of the issues in their relationship. And we saw that recently she signed a new contract with the company. Can you talk to us a little bit about what kind of made you guys as a team decide to, go with the UFC and sign a new contract? Because she's been on our show before, and she has said that once her old contract ran out, she'd almost be open to going and fighting in different places because of some of the history that she's had with the UFC before.
Well, I think it comes down just to respect value that Cris really kind of not really expects, but that's what she's worked her life to become, is the best champion she possibly can. And in the past, she was kind of got some roadblocks. She got through those roadblocks and really got to see how UFC wanted to be behind her. I think it made her understand that, the company's there for her. And the job that George Prazian has done working with Dana White and Sean Shelby has been amazing. They've been able to put this deal together. It was pretty quick of a time. I think it took about a month to get done, to get those little fine things detailed, signed, and the T's crossed, the I's dotted. And what George Prazian has done with Primetime 360 with Cris Cyborg has been amazing. And seems like we keep signing more and more fighters, so it's the business is just thriving, and I'm just excited to help out with the fighters to have a great future. And with Cris Cyborg, we've done that over the last 5 years.
Absolutely. You mentioned some of the obviously big fights potentially on the horizon of Cyborg in the future. Not to look past this fight. At the moment, Holly vs. Cyborg is a massive, massive fight. You mentioned Megan, you mentioned Jermaine, Amanda Nunes is another option. But there's always been that elusive Ronda Rousey fight. I mean, is that something that in your mind you're sort of still chasing for Cyborg? Do you feel like because it was built up for so long and there was obviously so much behind it, is that something you'd still, I guess, like to see and hope to see before Cyborg finishes her career, whenever that may be?
I think the fans deserve it. I think Cris deserves it. And for sure, I think Ronda deserves everything she said about Cris. If you're ever going to talk about somebody, at least step in the cage and try to prove yourself. But if she's afraid to do it, I understand. There's many women who are afraid to fight Cris. And it's just, like I say, the proof's in the pudding of how dangerous Cris truly is. If that fight's in front of her, it shows that UFC are able once again to put a great, huge fight together.
Here's the other interesting thing, Tito. Do you think Cris needs it? Or do you think at this point, in some ways, she's almost surpassed? A lot of people feel like she's already the most dominant female in MMA, and maybe she's surpassed that Ronda Rousey fight.
I think she's past it, but I know she still would love to do the fight. I know she still would love to put her hands on Ronda. And, I mean, that's just the way Cris works. She's a very respectful woman, a very kind woman. But when it comes to fighting and someone talks about her, she's willing to step in and defend herself. So if that fight ever does come up, I think it would be a huge payday for both fighters.
Final question on Ronda. I mean, some people are questioning Ronda Rousey's legacy. She beat fighters such as Kat Zingano, Betch Kohir, Sarah McMahon, Alexis Davis, Liz Carmouche. And these are all tough competitors, but not really fighters who have had too much success in the UFC since losing. Do you believe that if Ronda came into the current bantamweight division, she would be in the top spot of the division or in a position to even challenge for the title in 2017?
Not after taking the time off that she's had. She's taken a lot of time off. And losing the way she has, people have really found the holes in her game and exposing it every bout she has lost the last 3 bouts. It's just one of those things that someone finds a hole in someone's game, they're going to expose it. But if you're not willing to fix those holes in your game, you're never going to do well. And I guess the stardism got to her a little too fast, and that's too bad because she was a great champion.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we let you go, Tito, we could talk to you all day, but we'll let you go on this one. What's the prediction? In your heart of hearts, obviously you are Cris Cyborg's manager and wrestling coach. How do you see her getting the win over Holly Holm at UFC 219 on December 30th?
Either knockout, referee stoppage, one or the other. This ain't going the whole 5 rounds. We're working on 5 rounds, but it's not going to go that 5 rounds because we have her sparring with men, and she don't spar with any women at all. She spars nothing but with men. A kid from South Africa, Don Magnan, who's a 155-pounder, who's a stud. That's her sparring partner, her main sparring partner. Like I say, I don't see this fight going past the 5, but she's ready for 5. She's super, super brutal. Like I say, she's the modern day Mike Tyson.
Any particular way that you see Cris catching Holly? She's obviously very elusive. She likes to sort of be on the outside. Do you think it'll be a case of Holly coming in and Cris catching her, or do you think it's sort of Holly playing on the outside will sort of be to detriment and Cris will find her?
Well, everybody's idea that what Holly would do is sit on the outside and try to pick her apart by using her length. But I think Holly's going to try to close the gap and put Cris to the ground. And not willing to be striking with her. To take down Cris is going to be super hard. A lot of men have a lot of problem taking her down already, and if they do take her down, a lot of men have a lot of problem holding her down. So when it really comes down to it, is the fight in general when it comes is hopefully Holly's ready because Cris will be.
Well, there you guys go. He's a busy man, and even though he's retired from the world of MMA, he's still becoming a star in the world of acting and the world of managing and a bunch of different businesses as well. Tito, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here on Submission Radio. Guys, make sure to follow Tito on Instagram at Tito Ortiz 1999 and, of course, on Twitter at Tito Ortiz. And also, don't forget to visit punishmentathletics.com for all of your Christmas needs. We're on the website before. There's some fantastic deals coming for Christmas. Get somebody something special under that Christmas tree. Get him a Punishment T-shirt or any of the other great athletic apparel available on the website. That's punishmentathletics.com. Tito, thank you so much for coming onto the program, man. Have a great Christmas and New Year with the family. Really appreciate your time.
Awesome, man. Thank you guys so much. And everybody in Australia, I appreciate your support. And for us, everybody across the world, I appreciate your support. Thank you so much, guys.
Awesome.
Enjoy Christmas. Have a great New Year.